Welcome to this class. Thank you for joining us in our series on a revelation of hell. We're discussing the true doctrine of hell, whether or not it's in the Bible or not. Join us each Tuesday and Thursday night at 7 p.m. for these classes. We look forward to having you, and God bless you as we start. Welcome back to the apologist, and we are still discussing the doctrine of hell as is taught in Western theology. The doctrine of hell is something that was put into theology. It is a extra biblical theological concept. And when I say extra biblical, I mean it's actually outside of the Bible, but it is in theology. It is not found in the Bible, but it is found in theology and in the teachings of Plato, Augustine, and the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Babylonians, the Persians, and all of those who have come from the religions were developed out of the scattering from the Tower of Babel. And so for that reason, it might be uncomfortable for many to watch these videos or to read this material, because when you are Bible-based, and you have all confidence in the Bible, and you have all confidence in your Christian leaders and teachers who teach you, then that is the scope of your experience and your exposure to the interpretation of scriptures. But what has happened is that there is an umbrella of what you may call interpretations that are what we call extra biblical. I'm using the word extra biblical because they are not really in the Bible, but they were put in what we call theology. Theology is what men say the Bible says. In other words, theology books are what how men interpret the scriptures, and then what they teach to the public, and what they teach, what they put in commentaries, and what they teach in seminaries is not necessarily the truth. So anyway, the doctrine of hell, the reason why a lot of this is foreign to a lot of us is because the origin of the doctrine of hell is from extra biblical philosophy and quote theology, and not from biblical truth. So and so that's the reason why, as an apologist, as an apostolic apologist, it is our job to research and find and to be able to explain what it is that we teach and what we believe. And so in the search for the doctrine of hell in the scriptures and to why we believe it, we have found that we believe it because it was given to us by the extra biblical out of the extra biblical writings, and from people like Plato and Augustine. It didn't come from the apostles. This is what research is finding, that this did not come from the apostles, didn't come from Jesus, didn't come from the Old Testament prophets, but it came from the pagan world, the Egyptians and the Babylonians, and in particular Plato. And so these are pagan, these are secular philosophers and pagan philosophers. So that idea came from them, and it was interwoven into the theology. And the theology, those who write theology book commentaries, the commentaries that we read in seminaries, and so then it was handed down to us. But research finds that this is not biblical. So and that's what we're working on here. And one of the main scriptures that they misinterpreted for our studies is the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. They tried in their interpretations and in their systematic theology to identify or to name or call this or say that they have found hell in the Bible by looking at the rich man and Lazarus. And of course, you know, in other lessons that we have explained that the rich man and Lazarus is not about the Platonic hell idea. But the rich man and Lazarus was a parable given by Jesus that was directed at the Jews, and he was telling the Jews that the circumstance where they were rich and with all of the things of God, and the Gentiles were poor and had none of the things of God, that situation, it was going to change. It's a parable, and what I want to do is I wanted to explain in this video what the bosom of Abraham is. The bosom of Abraham. So the name of this lesson will be the bosom of Abraham. So the bosom of Abraham, as we see in Luke, where Jesus said Lazarus died and he was carried by the angels to the bosom of Abraham. The bosom of Abraham, first of all, we want you to explain to you that this is a symbol of all of the promises of God and all of the blessings of all of the promises that God made to the Hebrews, to the Jews. And if you will notice, if you study Abraham, the Abrahamic covenant is the covenant that God made with man that included a promise of a lineage, a promise of land, and a promise of blessings on the earth. And the extended part of the Abrahamic covenant culminates in the millennial period, which is a period where the Jews will occupy the earth and the Lord will come, and it'll be 1,000 years of peace. And that is actually to the Jews who will occupy the earth. And so, and then all of the blessings and the favor of Abraham, even actually the new covenant and the new covenant, and the church is also an extension of the Abrahamic covenant, because in this the seed of Abraham comes Christ, who Christ is the what you call the earth blesser, and so he dies and he includes everybody in the new covenant, and the new covenant is the church, and so everyone is included in the new covenant in the church, even the Gentiles are included. And so the new covenant, which was an extension even of the Abrahamic covenant, but the new covenant has certain components to it. In the new covenant, the church goes to heaven in the rapture, but in the Abrahamic covenant, where its extensions from it is the Davidic covenant, which is the kingdom covenant, Palestinian covenant, which is the land covenant, and in the Davidic covenant, that's the millennial is fulfilled in that, and the millennial is fulfilled in the Palestinian covenant, and the millennial fulfills even the Abrahamic covenant in its basic sense, but relative to the Jews here on the earth and all that they had. So the Abrahamic covenant, Abraham, the bosom of Abraham, is all of those promises and all the comfort and all the blessings that the Jews had in Abraham. This Abraham's bosom in Luke, where Abraham actually comes and talks with the rich man. First of all, we must understand that the rich man and Lazarus is a parable and is speaking corporately of the Gentiles and corporately of the Jews. Lazarus is corporately the Gentiles and the beggars at this particular point, according to Ephesians 2 and 12, they were not privy to the commonwealth of Israel. In other words, all the things that the Jews had. And so now, and the rich man is corporately the Jews. This is not about individuals going to heaven, but it is about the corporate status of the Jews. So the rich man represents the Jews corporately. And so it is not a true life story, because Abraham appears in it. And somebody say, well, it's got to be true life because Lazarus, he got a name. No, that name Lazarus means the Lord is our helper. In other words, he's a helper. In other words, he's going to help the Gentiles. That's the message that Jesus was given to the Jews when he spoke. That name has a meaning to it. It's not just Lazarus, his mother named him that, and he grew up with that name in the neighborhood. No, that was a name that meant something. It meant that Jehovah is going to help us. He's going to help the Gentiles. He's going to help the strugglers. All right, so that's why the name Lazarus was given. And so, and that's why Jesus gave it in the parable. Then we see Abraham. Now, first of all, you have to understand that this is a parable because, well, all of the other parables that Jesus spoke in that class that were down there, he said they came a certain man, a certain rich man. All of those were parables. And so this one comes down as a parable. In a parable, there are things that are said and done that maybe not be true to life, but they're put there to make the point. So Abraham appears. Now, first of all, you got to recognize that Abraham is dead in his grave. So this is not about Abraham, the person, or the man Abraham, as if Abraham was in the afterlife. Abraham wasn't even carried away. He died. Now, if Elijah or Enoch had appeared in here, we may have said maybe it had something to do with the afterlife, or maybe some, because they were carried, they were raptured out of here. All right, but Abraham was not. Abraham died. So this is not a real physical Abraham or the person Abraham. This is what Abraham represents. This is the promises that God gave through Abraham. Abraham was just the agent of what God was doing with the Jews and what God's going to do with the Gentiles. So Abraham is not in person in this parable. It is not. He is not in person. Now, if Abraham were in person, that would change the whole definition of life after death. It would say that Abraham was a key man in life after death. When Abraham is not the key man, and that's not his job, all of Abraham's promises, if you study them, were all related to the earth, the millennial, and things on the earth, not in the afterlife. Nothing in the Abraham covenant was pertaining to the afterlife as it relates to the Jews, okay, and their promises. All right. So now here was what we have. We have the Abraham appearing. Abraham is the symbol of the promises of God that were given to they were only privy to the Jews. But what happens here in the story of the rich man and Lazarus, Lazarus dies, and in one of the other tapes we explain what that means. The death is the end of the corporate situation of the Gentiles being in poverty and not having access to the things of God. So that's what the death represents. Then the rich man dies. That's the end of his only being the one corporately that have the riches of God. Corporately, we're speaking corporate now. So this is a corporate parable. It's not an individual parable where we're speaking of individuals going to judgment. All right. So the rich man ends up in a gulf far away from the promises of Abraham. Lazarus is in the bosom of Abraham. That is the place of the corporate access to the promises that were given to the Jews in Abraham. This has nothing to do with individuals going there. It has to do with the corporate people of the Jews, now the corporate people of the Gentiles. Most probably in the church is when the Gentiles come in and they're actually enjoying the blessings of Abraham, while the Jews are far, far away. They're blinded and they're scattered and they're in what we call a bad situation. This is why Abraham, when he comes to him, calls the rich man's son, because it's showing the Jewish situation. And so he calls him son, and he tells him that in your life, in other words, in your time, under the Old Testament, you had all of these things. You had Moses, you had the law, you had Abraham, you had all of that. And now and Jesus told him, you've been put out, and the Gentiles are now in, or have the opportunity to be in. Is this an eternal put out? Not necessarily. It's just a corporate put out. It's a corporate situation. But even in the corporate put out, there's going to be a remnant of Jews that are going to be saved, according to Romans chapter 11. So there's going to be a remnant of Jews that are going to be saved, But for right now, corporately, they are out and they're blinded, and the church is in, and their history and their prophets are all shut down during the church age, because now Lazarus, the one who's being helped, the church, the Gentiles, are in the bosom of Abraham. And so that's the actual meaning of the bosom of Abraham. The bosom of Abraham is mentioned nowhere else in the Bible. It's not there. But you'll probably find that a lot of theologians have attached the ideal of the afterlife to it. And that's only because of what we call erroneous theology that was born out of what they call replacement theology, which is a theology that they developed to eliminate any interpretations that show the significance of the Jews, that they were actually the chosen people of God. It's actually a theology that is wrought by Satan to try to minimize the value of the Jews by saying that this parable is not about the Jews, it's about heaven and hell and individuals. And another video we will talk about trying to show you the points why it is very definitely clear that this is not a historical event and is not a true life story, but it is a parable that Jesus was giving to the Jews, letting them know that things are going to change, and your status that you have now, you're going to lose it. And so that's what Abraham's bosom is about. God bless you, and thank you for tuning in to this message on the revelation of hell. God bless you till our next lesson. And then maybe in our next lesson, we'll talk about all of the points as why we understand and believe that this is not any historical event. It is a parable with a powerful message from Jesus pertaining to the status of the Jews and the status of the Gentiles in the coming church, the then coming church. God bless you, and thank you for listening.